Hello and welcome to another edition of Mailbag. What is Mailbag? Well, Mailbag is a feature of the channel where you guys leave lots of comments on the channel and I attempt to answer those comments, or if I can't answer those comments, I throw it out to you guys who have more knowledge on some of this stuff than I do. So let's get into the first mailbag of this session. Remember, like, comment, subscribe to the channel. Go over to Instagram and follow me there. Go over to Facebook, follow me there. That's where the normal notices are. And consider becoming a Patreon. Next comment and question come from Milad Fazal. Hopefully I got your name right. And this was in response to a Mailbag video I did, which was restored a Roland U220 and I got a clean Yamaha SY77. A video I did back in April 2024. And Milad writes, "Hello, I'm Milad from Iran. I have a question about the PA80 operating system." I'm assuming this is the Korg PA80. The questions are, what program is it written in, and 2, is it editable? Interesting questions, and questions that I don't necessarily know the answer to. I definitely don't know very much about the Korg PA80 because I've never had a Korg PA80 and a Korg PA80 has never graced the workshop or the studio. But, and I'll make a generalisation here about this, keyboards of certain eras that have embedded logic tended to be written in a very concise language, which normally was C or a derivative thereof C, which is C+ or C++. The reason for that is because it needs to be concise, because it's going to be put on a ROM chip, and ROM and RAM were relatively expensive back then. So you couldn't have a massive amount of memory there. So in order to make the operating system work and squeeze as much firmware onto the thing as you could, you wrote in these low-level languages because that's how you did it. Now, so I think it's probably C, C++, C++, one of those, a derivative thereof. Could be wrong, but I suspect that's where it is. Now, in order to answer your second question, is it editable? Well, the answer is normally yes, because the manufacturers need to have a way of updating firmware. So they normally have a way of making it editable. And you can edit it either by removing the ROM chip and putting it into an EEPROM reader and using the EEPROM reader to download the contents of the ROM chip and then effectively disassemble the code. That's one way of doing it. There's probably, if you can get hold of the original source, that's another way of doing it. But normally there is a way of being able to update it. You update the ROM chip, but if you want to make the code editable, if you don't have the source, you have to effectively go through a process of uncompiling, which is what I just said then, disassembling it. And that uncompiling will try to put the code back into a user-readable format as opposed to a machine-readable format, which is how the code will be stored on the ROM chip. I'm assuming it will. Now, so I've answered it. Yes, it will be editable in some way or other. And if you watch videos by people like Cintor, they've actually gone in and edited code back from when, if you like, and that code was edited and supplied to, I think they did the Juno 107, where they actually edited the start-up screens and a couple of other bits to make the software work with the mods they did. So, yes, the answer is. But, of course, I'm going to put a massive caveat around this. And the caveat is that unless you really know what you're doing in this space, messing around with the internal ROM can mean you can actually brick your synthesizer. So there is a note of caution here. If you're going to start messing around with firmware and you don't really know what you're doing, if you bugger your synth up, then kind of you were told. If you do know what you're doing, you can probably make it do a hell of a lot of stuff. One of the areas where this has been done really well is the Vercommon, and I'll probably pronounce that wrong, update for the JX10, the Roland JX10, where Vercommon effectively rewrote the firmware. And if you're going to buy a JX10, you really need the Vercommon firmware on the system, because that makes the JX10 a lot more usable. And we'll leave it at that. Next comment question comes from Gary J. Robinson. And this was in response to more differences between the JX-3P and the Roland JX-03, which was a mailbag I did in May 2024. Gary writes, I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure the JX-3P VST can actually go up to 128 notes polyphonic. I wonder why they couldn't add more polyphonic to the boutique. I know it's not a perfect module, but it's a great little module, modern version of the machine. I also think that with the K25, it's one of the best looking boutique synths. Well, I suspect the reason why is the VST is based on a computer. How much more access to much more horsepower, as in the computer RAM and memory, the analog circuit behavior modeling technology used by Roland was really heavy on resources, which is the reason why the pinnacle of the technology really has been the Roland System 8. And now everything that Roland are releasing is now using the Zen Core engine. Behringer have adopted a technology based on ARM chips, which is more flexible and allows them to reproduce synths like the Oberheim OBXA, which is funny enough on the rack behind me. I think it's really the way that they've gone about modelling the circuitry in the original Roland piece. As I say, they came back and said it was, or it's been mentioned in many articles over the years since they started with the whole boutique and ARIA ranges, that the modelling, the way they've done the modelling on those is very memory hungry for what it is. So quite simply, I think the way they got around it was to cheat, but Behringer have done it in a different way. So that's how they seem to be able to reproduce and enhance the reimagined synthesizer that they are currently publishing.